everyone, my name is BlackWitchDirah. Welcome back to my channel. I am a Luciferian witch of the left-hand path and an occult educator. So it's been a little while since I did a video for my Goetia Experiments series, and there is a good reason for that. Things did not go to plan. Things did absolutely not go to plan at all. And I have been licking my wounds, I suppose, about the whole thing. So the goal has changed. The goal is no longer the goal that I set out to achieve. And the reasons for that are what I'm going to be going into in this video. Now, I'm not one for trigger warnings. I don't think that people should have to put trigger warnings on things that are, you know, slightly unpleasant to talk about. I think that everyone is responsible for the content that they consume and their emotions that they feel as a result of the content that they consume. That is not the responsibility of the content creator. However, I'm going to be touching on the subject of eating disorders, and as someone who has had an eating disorder for 11 years, for the most part being in recovery, which I'm very thankful for. I know how eating disorders work, and I know how they are, I'm going to use the word that I hate, triggered, and I know that part of me having an eating disorder is that not all the time, but some of the time, particularly when I was younger, I would be seeking out triggering content. Now, this may feel like it makes the trigger warning even more futile, but I just know how, like, I feel about it nowadays, in the sense that, like, I don't like to watch things about people having eating disorders and stuff like that. Like, it makes me feel a certain kind of way. And because I'm not putting it directly in the title that this video is going to include that topic, I just want to mention it here. That is something I'm going to be talking about. So not so much a trigger warning, more so just saying that this is what I'm going to be talking about. Like, it's not my problem if you're triggered by it, but like, if that is something that you are easily triggered by, basically don't make it my problem. So you can obviously assume that that had something to do with my decision here. So, needless to say, I am not competing when I said I would be competing. I don't know when I will be competing, if I will be competing, you know, if ever. It might be a year, it might be 2 years, it might be never. I don't know. But I had to make this decision for the sake of my own safety and sanity. So, but, you know, I don't want this to be a thing of like, oh, it was, you know, it was pointless, it was a mistake. Like, I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. And what I do want to focus on is how the work with Goetic spirits and also non-Goetic spirits did actually really help me throughout this whole experience. Something I didn't see coming throughout this whole thing was that how much the reduction in food and, you know, being hungry like all the time would bring my shadow out and bring out all this like really nearly dropped my tea, brought out all this really unpleasant stuff in terms of bringing up like stuff from the past, certain like insecurities or fears that I hadn't thought about in a really long time. And it just brought a hell of a lot of awareness to that stuff, which was really good. Like, it was a really good thing that it did that, because it was stuff that I had kind of forgotten about and stuff that I didn't realise was still there. So it kind of in a way shone some light on the shadow by putting me in somewhat of an altered state through lack of food. And yeah, you know, I learned some stuff about myself. I decided to withdraw from doing my competition 4 weeks out of the competition, which sounds insane when you've been working for the best part of a year towards a competition, then you pull out a month before. If I had continued, I would have really put myself and my health at risk, and it was a really, really difficult decision to make. It was a really difficult decision to make. And I had a lot of guilt and shame and, you know, really kind of beating myself up about it and thinking, you know, like, of myself as like weak and all of this stuff. Bottom line is that this is definitely the hardest thing I've ever physically put my body through, in terms of, I mean having an eating disorder, it puts a lot of pressure on your body. So I mean in terms of like something seen as good and productive, not something unproductive and very, very bad for you. So other than my kind of past eating disorder practices, bodybuilding was definitely the hardest thing I've ever put my body through, but it was also very rewarding. It's difficult because this situation is so grey, and I think that's what's been messing with my head the most, is trying to decipher, like trying to put it in a box of whether it was good or whether it was bad. Like, it was both. There were some amazing things about it, and there were some really not so amazing things about it. The amazing things were being able to push myself and thinking that I couldn't do things, and I could, in terms of like, you know, doing crazy amounts of cardio and lifting and being like, I don't know how I'm gonna fucking do it, but doing it anyway. And, you know, the practice of discipline and, you know, watching my body change and do things, and, you know, it was amazing to see. The not so amazing stuff was crying at everything, not having any fucking energy, not being able to work because I was just so tired all the time, being so uninspired, lacking creativity, not having a social life. I couldn't, you know, if someone invited me to go do something, I'd be like, well, there's going to be food around, and I would rather not have to suffer from sitting around food, because it was just awful having to watch other people eat things that I really wanted to fucking eat. And yeah, so I was like, you know, I basically just put my social life on hold, and it was really isolating, it was really lonely. And then the eating disorder stuff came in, where obviously when you are on prep for a competition, it's very, very restrictive. Now, I was of the mindset when I first started this, like, people warned me, they were like, you do know it's probably not a good idea if you have a history of an eating disorder, and I was like, I'm not gonna let that define me, I'm not gonna let that get in my way. I didn't really realise the lack of choice I had in that, because the thing is when you start restricting and you have an eating disorder, your brain can't tell the difference to whether you're like starving yourself because you're anorexic or whether you're starving yourself because you're prepping for a competition. Like, it does the same thing to the brain. It's like, for example, taking an opiate for recreational using and taking an opiate for pain. It's doing the same thing to the brain. So I didn't really realise the lack of kind of like power that I had over that. Like, you know, I tried my best, but yeah, it was doing the same thing to my brain, and then it created this really fucking awful thing when it came to like my relationship with food as well. Like, my relationship with food went back to square one, in terms of like when I was anorexic and just really afraid of food. So that all kind of went back to square one, and just the pressure to fucking like lose weight. I was trying to lose like a kilo a week, and that's not healthy. I mean, I knew that bodybuilding wasn't healthy. I was never claiming for it to be, you know, like, oh, I'm on a health kick. Like, no, it's an extreme sport. It's not fucking healthy. But yeah, trying to lose like a kilo a week, and I was just like, this is not good. This is bad. And it was so stressful because like losing weight, and obviously when you lose weight you're losing muscle as well. Like, you can't just lose fat, like you are going to lose muscle as well. It's like when you bulk, you're going to put on muscle, but you are also going to put on fat as well. You can't like eat a certain way or exercise a certain way to stop that from happening. Your body is either going to eat into things that it needs or or gain things as a result of like the surplus of calories. So I was losing muscle as well, and it was really fucking stressing me out. So I was just like, okay, cool, I'm like losing fat, but I'm also losing muscle, and then I need to like work harder to maintain the muscle, and it was so stressful. And I think the stress was the thing that got to me, and I just really wasn't in a good way. And it just got to the point where I was like, I got up one morning, I weighed myself, I hadn't lost weight, and I was just like, you know what, I'm so fucking done with this shit now. And I was kind of thinking like, come on, we've got 4 weeks, just see it through. But I was just at a rock bottom. I just couldn't move anymore. There was nothing that was gonna keep me moving. I was done. And then I thought, okay, well, if I'm making that decision, I need to like completely sabotage everything so that I'm officially nipping it in the bud. This is me like not in my right mind by thinking this, by the way. So what did I do? I binged, and then I did the other thing that comes after that, and that was when I was like, okay, right, we've really hit that kind of like, we've really gone overboard now, you know, this has gone into dangerous territory, and if you carry on, you're not gonna come back from it. So I was like, okay, right, that's yeah. And I cried so much that day. I think I must have cried like all day long. I was so heartbroken, and you know, I felt terrible about myself for doing that. And but you know, I have an amazing support network. I have the most incredible support network ever, and I've been really held through it, and like I'm doing a lot better now. Also the fucking digestive shit as well, when you start eating again, oh my god, agony. So yeah, and I'm kind of like, where I'm like more level-headed now, I can see it for more like what it is, rather than like this, you know, kind of black and white perspective on it. And yeah, I'm trying to sort of think like, you know, at what point did it kind of start going south for me? And the overall kind of message I got from the work that I've been doing with Goetia Experiments was like, why do you feel like you need to suffer all the fucking time? Like, why do you need suffering to feel like you're doing something productive? Because this was an idea that I had attached to it as well, which was like, you need to suffer in order to be productive. It's like I was making this like sacrifice and this, you know, like extreme discipline, but when does discipline just become punishment? There's a really fine line there. And you know, I was just like punishing myself all the time, because it was this constant idea in my head that you're not good enough yet, and you know, needing to punish myself because I'm not good enough yet, I'm not stage ready. And yeah, I didn't need to be stage ready 4 weeks out, but it was things like not losing a kilo that week, and you know, it just it does something to you. It really kind of literally eats away at you. And then the other message I got from it as well was, they were kind of like, you really let things define you, and you really attach them to your identity, and then when that thing inevitably dies because it's either like unstable or an illusion, then you're left not knowing who the fuck you are. And this was from Belial, actually. So it was kind of like, I remember actually like a few days after I made the decision to kind of pull out of competing. So I was doing my sort of monthly offering to Belial, and I sat down and I was like, oh, you know, woe is me, and you know, I'm so sad about, you know, this like fucking competition shit. And he was just sort of like, oh, just don't come to me with that bullshit, like, you know. You have choices, you made a choice, it's not for anyone else to decide but you, and it doesn't have to be this huge thing that you attach your identity to and your self-worth, and you know, all of that is a choice. So just like, don't fucking do it. And then he was talking about the pain that comes about when I attach myself so tightly to things. And I was so attached to this for, you know, for a year I was training for this shit. I was so attached to it. It was one of like my main goals I was working towards, and then when it kind of slipped away from me, I was just like, I don't even know what I'm fucking doing anymore. So that's been a huge lesson from it. And I think the overall kind of lesson here is that when you work with goetic spirits, you don't necessarily get what you want. You're not necessarily getting what you've asked for in terms of your will, but in terms of your true will, you are, and that's if you're doing your rituals properly, I might add. Because if we are focusing on our will, we are more often than not attached to some kind of illusion. But if you are making space for your true will to come through, then that will always come through. And that is often not the most pleasant thing, because it usually involves some kind of death. It usually involves some kind of breakdown of illusion. So what you thought was real isn't, and then there's a grieving process attached to that. So I think that's the overall message here of like this goetic work, is that you're not going to get what you wish for. You know, they're not genies. If you do get what you wish for, there's often some kind of price, in the sense that there's consequences attached to it. They're not always bad, but like sometimes neutral. Like for example, I'll just use a really basic example here. If I'm asking for money and then I'm overloaded with work, there's a consequence. So, you know, everything has to balance out. So that's the kind of, the whole like lesson here. And in hindsight, there's definitely things I would have done differently. For example, I decided that about 3 or 4 months into my build phase for this competition, I was like, right, I'm going to just go straight in. I'm just going to go straight in. I want to go pro. I want to do like an IFBB pro qualifier, and you know, I want to work towards getting my fucking pro card straight away. And I look back and I just think, you had no fucking idea what you were in for. I could have just done some more low-key shows and eased myself into it and seen if I actually like enjoyed the experience and actually liked being on stage and shit like that, and it wouldn't have been so stress-inducing. I could have made this a whole lot less stressful for myself if I'd gone about it differently. But me being me, I always have to be doing the absolute fucking most. So that's another lesson. Maybe approach things a little bit slower next time I decide to set out on a really, really big goal, and break it down into smaller ones as well, because yeah, that was that was a fucking intense one to work on. So I suppose this leaves the question of, what am I going to do with Goetia Experiments now? I mean, this was just one goal. I had plans for Goetia Experiments to do a lot of other stuff. So what's my next goal going to be? Probably something to help me face my severe phobia of flying, because I am due to take a flight in about 6 weeks, and it's a long haul flight. So I'm like fucking shitting myself about that. So yeah, maybe I could work on that. I think that's sort of like my next sort of hurdle that I need to cross, like that's the most like stress inducing at the moment. So I'm gonna make some plans for that, and then my next Goetia Experiments video will probably be introducing that and how I'm going to go about it. I don't want to abandon this at all just because this didn't work out. I think fear of flying is a much smaller thing to kind of work on than you know, this competing shit, because there's so many more factors involved, whereas like with fear of flying, it's just about, just help me get on a fucking plane and not feel like I'm gonna die, basically. So I think that's a much more realistic goal to work on. I'm not expecting it to be completely erased, just bearable enough so that I'm able to get from A to B. So that will be what my next video is on. And yeah, we will go from there. So thank you so much for watching. This was quite a vulnerable video. So yeah, I don't know. I was kind of dreading making it, to be honest, because of my pride, but yeah, it's been a few weeks. I managed to put my pride aside and just say it how it is. So I will see you next time for my next Goetia Experiments video, and don't forget to subscribe to see more from me. So I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.